Okay, now TT-02BR box is also a transport. You can put the buggy in it when you're done. I'm not sure how it fits with the tires, wheels, and body on there, but and the wing, so we'll figure that out. But this is it, man. Let's see what happens. I'm not sure how well this thing focuses, but here are a few key featured components that they list on the side of the box. No tires, not an issue. I'll come up with something. There's the item number. Separately required items. Obviously radio gear, that's a given because it's not ready to run. Tires, front and rear. So let's get into this. Okay, as you can see, there's only a few parts in this box because I already built the chassis, but I didn't do a complete build video with it because it's a TT-02. There are some differences with this, you know, this is what, my second or third TT-02, but I only had one plain TT-02. I had the TT-02SR, well, I still have, and this one being the buggy version. I guess BR stands for buggy race. I'm not sure, don't quote me on that, but let's see how the video goes together. Hello everybody. Took a poll out and asked who would like to see a build video of the TT-02BR chassis, or yeah, chassis kit, I guess. And most of the replies were yes. Now I'm not going to do a complete step-by-step build guide because if you built one TT-02, it's all pretty much the same, but there are a couple of differences in this. As you can see, got the center shaft already in, and it rides on plastic little C-clips, but you could use probably the shaft without them. That's one difference in this kit. The other is the differentials. These are basically the ones that they use in the XV02, and it's not the same as the one in my TT-02SR because there's a few little differences, and most of that being these little washers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the diff almost together in step 5 here, and then I'm going to show you what I did on the front diff, and then we'll go from there. So I'll be right back. First thing first, get the bearings on, because if you start to assemble it and you forget to put the bearings on first, then you got to take it all back apart, and that could be a real pain. So put the bearings on first on these differential pieces, and you'll be fine. That's pretty much go-to on just about every kit. Another suggestion is lube your O-rings. All I got is this Molly grease, so that's what I'm going to use. Stick them in the differential where they're supposed to go, and you'll be good to go. Alright, now another trick is you got this big washer that has to go on over the output shaft, but you also have to keep the big, or that O-ring, that blue O-ring, inside the recess in the cup. Take your 5.5 mil nut driver or 7 mil or whatever the hell it is, stick it over that and just gently push it down, and everything goes through nice and smoothly. Just another little tip, should help out a lot, helps me out. Okay, in this step you gently push down the MA13, which is going to be the 5x7 by or 0.1 millimeter washer on top of the MA12, which is the bigger washer. So try not to bend them, because if you bend them, it may cause a problem. Gently, and some grease on tools is your best friend here. In this next step, you grab the MA17, which is the 1.6 by 9 millimeter shaft, and if you grab it in the center, or close to the center, getting it into the spot where it needs to be. This light sucks, sorry guys. There you go. There is a little cutout right here for the shaft to get in and push through. And it's not difficult once you get it all lined up. And it goes right into position. No fussing, no mussing. All right, next up, self-explanatory. When you take the gears off the parts tree or the spur or whatever you want to call it, make sure you get rid of all of the flashings on the gear. It's going to help it run a little smoother. All right guys, here's another spot where I differ from the manual. These little washers that go on the back of these little planetary gears, or whatever you want to call them, I put a little grease on the gear to help hold them in place, because when you go to stick them into the cup, they can move. So what I like to do is I like to put them all the way to the end, so when I drop it into the diff cup, they don't move. So just another little tip, put a little grease on them to hold them, and you should be good to go. I am so sorry folks, I did it backwards. Do one shaft first, drop it in, and then you could push the gears back to the sides so they engage the large planetary gear or differential gear, and make sure the flat side is up on these. Doesn't use the plastic crosses. These are like aluminum or titanium pieces, I'm not sure which, but they are not magnetic. So I do this one first, drop it in the cup, then I'll do this one and set it down on top of it. And when I do, again, take a pair of needle nose pliers, I hold it in the center, right on where that flat is, so with the gears on, I could drop it right in the position without having a problem. So that's how I'm doing it, and I forgot to mention that earlier. All right, see how that's got the cut out there? A little bit of grease to hold the washers on in place. Now all I got to do, it's kind of hard to do through the camera, but just let it drop in, right in, and it sits right down on the flat on the other shaft that's in there. Well, there you go. Easy peasy. All right, now my next step is to put these two halves together after I put some oil in here. But let me put some oil in and I'll be right back. Okay, as you can see, maybe not, I don't know. I went just under where it says the fill to the top of the shafts that hold the smaller, I guess you could call it planetary gears, or bevel gears. Either way, it's supposed to be filled up to the top of the top shaft there. Problem with that is I've always had them leak, because you can't compress the fluid, and as it's spinning and you got all those forces with those gears spinning, that pressure has to go somewhere. So I go just a tad under, and then and to keep it, because on the first diff, on the front diff that I did, I had a little problem, and I'll get to that in a second. All right, what I have here is Permatex, the red stuff. It's a 1-minute gasket maker. Put a little bit on a piece of plastic after I pulled the plug out. That's way too much, but what I'm going to do, I took a toothpick or cocktail stick or whatever you want to call it, and I cut a tip off of one end. I'm going to take just a very little bit, and I'm just going to go around the surface just a little bit all the way around. So let me get this done. I'll be right back because I only have a minute to work with this stuff. Okay, just go around the outside edge and then take your gasket, slap your gasket on, then take the gasket, peel it off, and stick it in position on the other half of the spur gear or the differential gear. That way you have a gasket sealer on both sides. Whoops, and it's giving me a problem. Hang on 1 second, stand by. All right, once it's in place, then you could make the two halves together and bolt it up. All right, guys, now the trick is not to get RTV into the screw holes on the larger diff half. However, some of you know that these screws like to strip out very easily, even if you're using their higher quality tools versus the Allen keys that you get in the kit. Well, guess what? On my front diff, it did the same thing. But on the front diff, it was just one screw. Here, I got two screws that are starting to round out inside the hex. So, what do? Well, my solution is I went and got my Mac Tools bit driver kit, and I grabbed the T6, which is a Torx bit, and stuck it in my Mac Tools driver, and here's one. And it grabs that little sucker, and I can tighten it down. Remember to go in a crisscross pattern with these. That one's tight. That one's tight. All right. This is the other one that started to slip out on me. And as you can see, I'm getting some turns on this thing. So just snug them up. Do not reef the hell out of them. Do not crank them down super tight. Especially if you're going to use a little bit of silicone on the either side of that the gasket. I'm going to let this sit for a few days, and I'm going to have it sitting upside down so all the fluid that was in the larger diff cup there should hit the smaller half, and if it's sealed, I shouldn't have any leakage. So I'm going to let that sit for a few days and then get back and put the differential into the chassis and get that covered up. So thanks for watching. I know it's a little bit long or a little bit short. I can't remember. I don't know how long this has been going, but the T6, good quality T6 Torx bit. Gently get it in there to crank them, to tighten them up. And guess what? It works to take them out as well. Again, but if you strip them, you're shit out of luck. Don't go too crazy. So I'm going to go around these one more time, make sure that they're good, and then I'm going to let it set. Thanks guys for watching. Any questions or comments, please leave them below, and I will try to help out as much as I can. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye. Not bye yet, guys. I forgot to say one thing. If you're going to make sure that your diffs aren't leaking, you know, just an old spray paint can. It's got this little thing in there. Set your diff in there. I drove this out to hold shocks, but I'm going to set it on a paper towel anyway. But just so you know, you can let it sit there like that, and it holds it pretty good. Another little tip. Hope you enjoy. Bye. All right, guys. I got the motor in. Got the differentials done. Now I got to flip it over, and I got to put these A9s and the A12 into place, which is a little different than the standard TT-02s that I've built. So I'll get these in, and then I'll get the rear arms on, and then we'll go from there. So this is where I'm at. Alright, so with those little A9 parts here and here that go inside this part of the bulkhead here, even with the AW grease to hold them in place, it's still a bit tricky. So we got that done. So all these steps are done. Got the battery posts in already. And so now we're going to move over to, and this doesn't move over anymore, but we're almost done with bag A. We're going to do the front bumper and then the front suspension. Does say here to attach A11 before A8. So A11 is the front bumper, which is going to go here, and then A8 goes on afterwards. So we're going to get that done. Then we're going to put A14 on, some suspension brackets or bushings or whatever, and then the front suspension, and then we'll move over to step 17 and get this, whatever that is, the rear bumper attached, and go from there. So I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, so sorry about that. Over in step 15, you got these little plastic A10s that you got to use AW grease to hold them in place. Now, I thought those would have like been brass or something, or some sort of metal, because that's where this other, if I can get it out, this other U-shaped bar is going to ride off of this mount, and this is going to hold your suspension arms in place. This is what they're going to pivot on. Might not be much of a big deal because the arms are going to do the moving, not the rod. But just my thought, you know, I just figured they might have been like metal inserts like they were on the SR and the S. But live and learn. This part here, A14, goes on to the lower chassis diff mount with a couple of 3x10 machine screws. Put a little grease on there, go slow and inch them up little by little. I have had these, I don't know about the chassis, but the top of these, they do split if you like to use a power tool. So use your hands, go slow, careful, and put a little grease on the threads. It's going to help you out. Okay guys, ran into something a little funky here. As you can see, this is the front of the chassis where A14 goes on, correct? Okay, but then down here, where you have the A10s into the chassis, if I flip this upside down, you can see where it says A10s, and then the arrow's pointing to the back of the chassis, calling it the front. But yeah, no, this is the front where you have A14 and where the shock mounts on the arms are going to be. This illustration is wrong. The front of the chassis is pointing towards the back, and you can actually see right here how the tub is coming around, and that clearly says front with the arrow pointing towards the back. That is wrong, so keep that in mind, guys. You know what, guys, I take that back. I totally got this screwed up. This part here, which is A9 or A12, is supposed to be on the front. I got it on the rear clearly, so I got to do a little work. All right, guys, after Bob learned how to read, I got everything in the right spot. So there we go. That's all of bag A. I'm trying to hide the motor so you guys don't see what it is. That's a secret. So we'll go from there, and we'll see you when I start the next bag, which is bag B. And again, I'll just do a few little things and a little tips and tricks maybe, and we'll see what happens. Thanks, guys. We'll see you on the next part. Bye. All right, guys. Step 18. Making up the, I think these are camber links. Upper links, yeah, upper camber links. Space in between's got to be 10.3 millimeters. Screw on the ball connectors, which are actually quite easy on this one. Only towards the end where they got really tight that they just started to hurt the fingers, but got the spacers on with the ball studs. I'm going to mount it on the chassis, then I'm going to do the step 19, which is the universals with the hub carriers. So I'll be right back. I'm going to get this on. This is nothing special, but it is different compared to standard TT-02. So that's it. I'll be right back. Okay, I got that bolted on. Takes one 3x12 millimeter down in the bottom there in the center, and then two 10 millimeters on the outsides to make sure you get the links on the towards the inside of the tub instead of the outside as it shows. And after I did get past my snafu with confusing the front and the rear of the chassis, that's on me. I left it in here so you know I don't look like a genius. Leave my faults in. I'm going to get on to the differentials here, but or not differentials, the hub carriers and the hubs, and I'll see you in a little bit. Alright guys, step 19 is nothing special. You're taking your B7, which is the hub carrier, and you're taking your B2, which is your steering knuckle, and you're putting your shafts together. I'm going to show you what I do with those. Putting these two pieces together with the MB7s, which is the shoulder screws, and throwing in a couple of MB8s, which is the 5 millimeter ball studs here and there. But this is what I noticed. Now maybe a 4 millimeter washer underneath or in between these two on either side, well, might take care of some of that slop. That's going to be greatly exaggerated when you put a tire on there and you got that much movement going up and down. So just you know, something I just noticed, that's all. Alright guys, working on step 19. Got the one side done, which is going to be this side here in the illustration. Notice the ball studs. You can't really see it because it's down there. There you go. And working on this other side, as you can see, I got the ball studs in the proper locations. Got it together. This one does it too. So a little movement, but building the CD shafts or universals, constant velocity, whatever you want to call them. These here aren't the spring-loaded ones. They take the little grub screw that holds them together. But when I put them together, I use the VGTRF joint grease. It's green. It's very tacky, and it stinks. It smells like melted crayons. But let me get this together and I'll show you what else I do. I'll be right back. Well, first off, to avoid any messes, use a pair of needle nose pliers. I get the dog bolt end. I stick it in, greasy side first, rotate it as I put it together, and that's gonna, didn't do what I wanted it to do, but you know, because I'm on camera. But you know, I stick it in there, Don't need a lot of this grease because it will attract a lot of dirt. But that's all I do. And then when I go to put the rest of it together, I'll take the grease, I'll dab it a little bit on each side. That's more than enough that I'm going to need. I don't know if you can see it, but that's more than enough. I'll be right back. Let me get this together. Oh, one thing to note, if you're going to use grease to put these together, make sure you get the hole for the pin lined up. So when you put the other piece on, you can just slide the pin right in. At least that's how I do it. Let's see if I could actually do this on camera. I don't know if you can see. Got the pin, got the joint, and look at that, it went right in. Now I'm looking through the camera lens, so that's kind of hard to see. So with that, you got to find the threaded end, because there's a thread in that little barrel that goes in the inside. I got a little thread lock already on the grub screw, because you're going to need it. Line it up and screw it together. If I can get it to work, that would be perfect. There you go. It's a little tight to get going, but once it's in, there you go. That's that. And now, for my little trick, this is what we used to do way back when we were racing, before they had captured pins. So we take a strip or shrink tubing, stick it over the end, grab a heat source, like in my case I'm going to use a lighter. You want to make sure it's thin enough that it doesn't overlap into the bearing area. So when you shrink it down, it's free and clear. And what that's going to do is, if that grub screw does come loose and it tries to eject that pin, the shrink tubing will hold the pin in place until you can find another grub screw, because the grub screw might fling out. It may not, but you never know. And do not use the shrink tubing with the adhesive inside, because then it's going to leak into the joint, and then once it hardens, your joint's not going to move. So use the non-sealable type of shrink wrap if you're going to use this trick. Me, that's just preference, because I could stick it into the joint here. I can line up the hole, and that slides in, and I still got free movement, and it spins freely. So just another little tip, guys. On to the next episode. Be right back. All right, guys, step 20, it shows attaching the C-hubs or the hub carriers or whatever you want to call them to the lower suspension arm with using these freaking stupid, rotten freaking screw pins. So I decided not to do that. When I rebuilt my TT-02SR, I bought M05 hinge pin sets, and guess what? I'm going to be using those and these lower mounts because I think this kit deserves it in its price range. I don't know what the hell Tamiya was thinking, but you know, these pins, I have to put a little spacer on them because they have a little gap in them. But you know what? I bought a spacer set from Tamiya a while ago, so you know, it comes with a bunch of spacers. So I found the ones that I need, and that's what I'm going to use. Be right back. Getting those tiny E-clips on can be a bit trying, but with a little bit of room still left in the assembly, what I did is I got it into the grooves, then I pushed it down and held it in place, and with a small pair of needle nose pliers, just clip it in, and they seem to go in without a problem, or doing their typical namesake of Jesus clips as it just flies off into Never Never Land. So I got lucky with that. That suspension's on, front and rear, it's moving freely. Again, this is totally different than a standard TT-02 on-road car, so this is all new to me. I skipped a couple of pages ahead and put the shock mounts into the lower arms. There may be some work that has to be done here, but let me get onto the rear and we'll get that all buttoned up, get that all sorted. Alright guys, another tip. If you have bearings that don't fit in tightly into an assembly that you're trying to do, a little AW grease or any kind of tacky grease, just stick it on tap the bearing in there a little bit, and once you push it in, it will not, I repeat, will not fall out during assembly. So just another little tip, guys. Hopefully it works for you. It works for me. Alright guys, for the uprights, you're screwing metal ball stud into a metal bracket pretty much, and it doesn't say to use thread lock, but I put a little bit on there. Same with the screws that you know, that go into these ball studs here. So, you know, just to be safe, I put thread lock on all of them. Chassis coming along, so let me get these links made up and get the rear end together and go from there. Alright guys, doing these turnbuckles, it's not as hard as you think. Pretty much everybody has a 7mm socket or a 9/32 socket, and you know what? These ball ends, they fit snug. If I can get in, there you go. They fit snug, but they fit, and you can sit there and get it started. I'm going the wrong way. Try to keep it as straight as possible. And once it's started, definitely get a pair of pliers, because there's not a lot of surface area on these Tamiya rods for their little wrench to fit on. But once that's in there, I mean, it's relatively fast. I went through that whole length of threaded rod, well, that threaded portion, that fast. So just do that until you get your measurements of 20.5mm in between the two rod ends. You're good to go. Okay, so the TT-02BR chassis is built, it's completed, it's done, and you'll notice I have a different motor in there. Well, that's for a reason. The tires are actually off of my Super Avante TD4, because I didn't have tires to fit the rims that came with the kit. But this is it. The body work is something I'm going to try to do a little special thing with it. Don't know how well it's going to work out, but you know, I just got some new paints and a new airbrush, and I'm not very good with an airbrush, and you can't find brush on paints anymore because it's impossible, and yeah, it's a bunch of crap. But let me get back to the reason why I changed the motor. Okay, I originally had this 427 in there with the stock size pinion gear. This is supposed to be a 16 turn motor, and it's supposed to be something like 36,000 RPM, but you know, it doesn't perform as good as I thought it would. It's an older motor. It's a Trinity Speedworks blueprint motor, and if anybody knows, those are probably from around 89 and maybe 92, somewhere around there. You know, it just didn't work out. But let me get this up in the mount and I'll be right back. Alright, now that that's up in the mount, I'm I'm gonna grab this old, ooh, dusty. It's been sitting for a little while. My broken chassis were from my touring car were TT-02SB, whatever, SR. Broke the chassis out right here, but it's good for referencing and points and whatever. Might be able to epoxy something on there, but I don't know. But anyway, I originally had the 427 and the Yeah Racing adjustable motor mount. Now, the motor mount is supposed to be so you could adjust, you know, for different pinion size relatively easy. But when it's sitting in the motor, or yeah, when the motor is sitting in the chassis, yeah, it'll still move. But are you supposed to keep that lower screw on the motor loose so you can make your adjustment, and then just tighten down this screw once you get to where you want to be? Because there's really no way to get to that lower screw without drilling a big hole down around here somewhere. Actually, if I set that motor up straight, that hole would have to be right near this suspension pin, and you don't want to put a big ass hole there to be able to lock that screw down. If you lock it down before you stick the motor in and try to adjust it, you can't move the motor. So to me, it's a useless design. I'm just going to stick with the Tamiya style aluminum motor mount, like the one I have in here. You can't see it, but it's in there, and I'm just going to stick with those. Yeah, it's not a finer adjustment as the Yeah Racing, meaning that I don't have to use preset pinion gear holes to adjust the mesh. I mean, theoretically, you can go gradually through the teeth, so it's essentially the same. This is, to me, this is going to be a more solid mount where it's not going to come loose as easy and strip the spur gear. So stick with the Tamiya ones. Good design, Yeah Racing, but not good enough. Maybe a clamp style. I don't know if anybody'd come out with that would be able to fit the cover, but I don't know. Alright, we'll see you on the next one, guys. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you later. Bye.